It's tricky to rock around, to rock around, to rock around. It's tricky. It's tricky, tricky, tricky. Hello, Audioholics. This is Logan, and welcome to the first installment of Getting Into Trip Hop. Today, I will be trying to get into the band Tricky. I have gone into Spotify and looked at their bio. They have quite a bit under their belt. They've been at it for about 25 years. They've done some feature work even before their first album on Trip Hop Legends Massive Attack, and have been heralded by several bands, including the late, great David Bowie, who was always a personal favorite of mine. So, with that all out of the way, I am pretty excited to check out Tricky. If you haven't seen my intro video, this is part 1 of a 20-part series where I try to get into trip hop. If you are interested in something sort of like this, but a slightly different format, I highly recommend my co-host Tyler's videos, where he tries to get into prog music, prog metal, prog rock, basically anything prog-related short of the capital of the Czech Republic. I highly recommend his videos. They will all be put on the same channel as mine, but again, slightly different format. The way that my videos will work is I am going to be doing this slightly vlog style, where I turn on my iPad, lay back in my recliner, and put on the albums that I have selected. I will be, in this installment, listening to 2 albums by the band Tricky. The first one is their debut, Max and K, and the second one is On Uniform, which is their most recent album released in 2017. I am going to be listening to Max and K first, so let's get started. So one thing I need to say before I even start the album, I love this album art. It kind of looks like the floor of like a Mayan temple. Really, really nice. I don't know if that's what they were going for, but that's kind of what I got out of it. Either way, really, really nice. Anyway, let's listen. Alright, so right now I'm listening to the first track, Overcome, and it's a really good song. It ticks a lot of the same boxes as a lot of the trip hop I've listened to already. Like, it has like the girl with a really soft voice, a really simple, laid-back beat. I really like it, but this does kind of raise a bit of a concern going forward. Is there going to be enough diversity to even be able to comment on future trip-hop albums? I hope that there is enough diversity within this genre to really carry out a series, but, you know, that is a concern of mine. Hopefully it's in vain. But, you know, otherwise, very solid song, Overcome. Here is the second track, Ponderosa. Definitely a lot more of a diverse sound immediately. The vocal style is even pretty unique as well. It's kind of almost spoken word a bit. Even the accent, I think the vocalist kind of leans more into her English accent, which, you know, I'm sure that's not a conscious effort for most musicians, but it does kind of show, I guess, a sense of standing out, perhaps, when she does it. So I am on the third track now, Black Steel, and I really have to applaud this band's diversity. This is almost sort of like alternative, maybe you could even say quasi post-grunge. This is really out of left field, this song. I just really like this. I really applaud this band. I applaud their musical direction. On to the next song. Alright, we are on Hell is Round the Corner. This is, from my understanding, probably their biggest song. And definitely the most trip-hop song I've heard so far off of this trip-hop album. Feels very representative of the genre. Definitely very good. Sounds like, you know, Portishead or any of the other trip-hop acts that I've heard already. So now we are on Punkin'. Again, really nice vocals, really nice instrumentation, really diverse. This is kind of, I think, from my understanding, the difference between shoegaze and trip-hop is shoegaze is more melodic, while trip-hop is more like hip-hop. I think this is more of a shoegaze song, but it's still very good. Again, it shows their ability to be diverse. Alright, now we are on Aftermath. Pretty similar to Punkin', honestly. I don't really have much to say. Just really atmospheric, really laid back, pretty simple, but very effective. I like it. One thing that I do have to point out is this, I assume it's piccolo kind of thing at the very end of this song. It's really nice. Alright, we are on Abandoned Fat Track. I really like this. I like the kind of like warped harmony that the female vocalist and male vocalist, I will get their names, by the way, by the end of this episode, but I really like their kind of warped harmony. It's really kind of eerie, and I think it lends itself to a very unique listening experience. Alright, we are on Brand New, You're Retro, which, I take it back, this is the most trip-hop song on the album. Actually, this is probably the most hip-hop song on the album so far. But, you know, really good. I can't think of a single song off this album so far that I thought was actually bad. So we are on Suffocated Love. I really don't have much to say about this one. I mean, it's good for all the reasons that the other songs off of this album are good. Really tight instrumentation. I mean, like, you got, like, bongos and conga drums in the background. It's really nice. It's really trippy, really atmospheric, and I really like it. Alright, now we are on You Don't. I really like the kind of reggae beat. I really like the drums or drum machine, whatever is going on. It's a really good track, honestly. Alright, we are now on Struggling. Again, not much I can really say. Just a really simple yet utterly hummable and catchy hook. Really good music. And we are on the final track, Feed Me. Doesn't really offer much to say, just really excellent instrumentation as usual. And that's basically how I would wrap this album up, at least with my first impressions. Again, I will come back to it just before I post this to YouTube. But my first impressions, I love the vocals, I love the instrumentation, the hooks are really catchy, it has a really atmospheric vibe that I really like. Overall, I just have to say I really enjoyed my time, at least with this album. Now, let's get to Ununiform. Alright, we are now on the second album, Ununiform. This is the first real track. There was an intro, but this is the first real track, same as it ever was. Immediately, I have to say this sounds like a completely different band. It has kind of a techno beat to it, and I don't know if I like this. I'll have to listen to the rest of the album, but jury's still out as to whether I like this more or less, or about the same as Max and K, but I don't immediately hate it, so that is a positive sign. Alright, we are on New Stole next. You know, I said earlier on in the video that I was kind of afraid of this series, that it wouldn't give me much to talk about. Clearly that was in vain, because this album sounds completely different from their other albums. Seems like somewhere in about 20 years they sort of picked up an R&B influence, and immediately I want to check these guys out and kind of see what other influences they might have, kind of just check them out. I'm very much interested in this band. This song in particular kind of has, like I said, an R&B influence, but also kind of soul, gospel, blues. It's really a mixed bag, and I know this is kind of early to say this, but this might end up being my favorite track on the album. Alright, we are now on Wait for Signal, and I don't really like this song, but I see what it's trying to do. It's sort of like trying to mix their R&B influence and sound a little bit more like Max and K. And I guess I have to applaud them for the effort, but I just don't really like it. I'm not going to say it's filler or anything, and I'm not even going to say I hate it. If this was not on the album, I think that it would be a bit stronger. Alright, I'm now on It's Your Day, and I still would not say this is like a personal favorite of mine, but I think this is sort of like Wait for Signal, but it succeeds in doing what Wait for Signal attempted to do. And I kind of appreciate it more as a result of that. I still would not say it's one of my personal favorite songs. It's not on the same level as really anything from Max and K, except maybe Brand New Year Retro, which the more I think about it, the more I just don't really like that song. But I think that this is at least an important addition to the album. I am on Blood of My Blood now. This track, I think, is filler. One thing I will also add, though, is clearly there was some kind of a lineup change, because I don't think this was the same vocalist that was on Max and K. Again, I haven't actually looked into, like, the vocal lineups over the years of this band. I will do that before the episode is over and I give my final analysis on the band, but I think that vocal, or that lineup change must have carried with it this sort of R&B influence, and I applaud them for that. I think in some cases it works, some cases it really works, and in some cases it just kind of doesn't and it falls flat. Again, not even necessarily saying that any song is particularly awful, just not up to the standards of their earlier work. Alright, we are now on Dark Days, and this is what I am talking about. Back to the techno influence, back to the kind of level of hardness, back to the really good hooks and the really good vocals. This is kind of what I am talking about. Alright, this is The Only Way, and this is a much better soft song. And I've realized that even the songs that I don't like, I have to appreciate the hell out of. Because they took a band that I thought was just kind of like, oh, nice to vibe to. not really much to say apart from that, to a band that needs to be taken seriously as a legitimate, like, honestly, I could realistically see them breaking the pop charts, especially in this kind of day and age where pop music is sort of relatively downbeat. And I think that they, with their next album, have an opportunity to just sort of wriggle right in. I am now on Armor, and this adds to the point I made in the last clip. This could be taken seriously as a legitimate pop group, especially with a song like this. And I really understand why David Bowie gave this band his blessing. I think if David Bowie had released one more album, it would not sound too different from this. You know, I think Black Star might have sounded like a little bit more like this if, you know, obviously the circumstances surrounding it had not transpired. But, really good song. So I'm on Doll now, and there really isn't much to say about it. It's a simple little acoustic ballad, but effective for what it is. I like it. So yeah, I'm on Bang Boogie, and it is super catchy. Really good hip-hop. This is the first real hip-hop song, I think, off of this album. Just highly love it. Recommended. So, Running Wild is on now, and I won't say this is like my absolute favorite, but objectively this is the best song on the album so far. Really good lyrics, really good vocals, really good instrumentation. Just, if this is your introduction to the band, you will be hooked on it. Alright, we are on the last track of the album, When We Die, featuring Martina Topley Bird. Very good song. It's the most stereotypically trip-hop song on this album, but that's hardly a bad thing when it's this well done. So, that's all I really have to say about this album. Join me in a day when I go over my final thoughts and conclusion. So it's been a little over 24 hours, and I am now ready to give my final thoughts on Tricky. First of all, I made the error a few times throughout this video that it is a band. It's not. It's a solo project and somebody's stage name. His real name is Adrian Nicholas Matthews Thaws. And the woman who is in Max and K, who's primarily featured throughout that album and featured somewhat within On Uniform, her name is Martina Topley Bird. First of all, Max and K, I personally like it more. I think that it is a more consistent effort. However, with that consistency, it just gets a more enjoyable listening experience because it's less experimental, but at the same time, because of that, it's able to succeed in what it does in its own lane. On Uniform is an album that begs to be taken seriously, and I think that it should be. It wears a lot of influences on its sleeve, including R&B, soul, techno, and of course trip-hop. The reason I don't personally like it as much is because, again, it experiments a lot, and a lot has to be said for how much can just be crammed in about 39 minutes. But at the same time, when you do that much experimenting, every so often something's gonna go wrong, or something's not going to be as good as it could have been. I don't think there's any bad songs off of Ununiform, but there are songs that I preferred over others. There really wasn't that really wasn't the case with Max and K, except for Brand New Year Retro, which I didn't like. But even though I didn't like it, I couldn't, I couldn't sit here and tell you that that song is not catchy as hell. So bottom line, I definitely love Tricky, and I want to get into them a lot more after this. Stay tuned for the next episode of Getting Into Trip Hop, where I get into Bonobo. Thanks for watching.